Okay, so good morning. We're up to Siman Shin Yud Seif Gimel. Says the Mechaba, Bein be'isa achila, bein be'isa tiltul, kol dava shayiroi ben hashmashas. Anything which was usable, which was fitting at ben hashmashas on Shabbos, on Erev Shabbos, im eira by dava sheniskalkel by bayayim, if something happened which made it no good, no longer suitable during the day, during Shabbos, v'chazar v'niskan by bayayim, and then it became usable and again. So it reverts to being mutter and to no longer being mukta. But something which is mukta ben hashmashas is mukta kol hayom. That's the famous rule. So something which was roy, which was usable during ben hashmashas, and then over Shabbos something happened and it became no longer usable, it's mukta. So for example, the Mishnah is going to give an example of where you've got some raisins, and then they were left outside, it rained, it became very wet, so at Ben Hashmashas they're good. Over Shabbos, let's say Friday night it rains, and then you wake up Shabbos morning, they're very soggy, and you can't really eat them, but then later in the day it dried out. So that sort of situation, that would be okay, because at Ben Hashmashas it was okay. But something which was no good at Ben Hashmashas, then it's no...
Like the Eru, for example.
Yeah, there's slightly different because you can't fix it. There are others. So at Ben Hashmashas it was good or not good. So that's okay. If it's fixed, it's fixed. Here we're talking about something which was mukta. We'll see, in other words, and we'll talk about clothes, wet clothes and things like that. Let's see. Okay, so the rule is something which was huksa ben hashmashas is also kol hayom. But if it was non muksa ben hashmashas and over Shabbos it became no good and then it became good again, then you're okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Yudalet. Bein be'isa achila. Hi bein have a revusa tfei. It's telling me a chiddush. Bereisha le'inyan isa achila, regarding something which is also b'achila. V'rotzolema delema boya le'inyan tilta ba'alma. Not only just some muksa, which about moving or touching something, but vadai amrina de'in muksa lachatzi Shabbos. It's called chatzi Shabbos, i.e. that bein hashmashas it was okay. It becomes also then becomes muksa again, so it's called muksa lechatzi Shabbos. So if for regular muksa we don't say muksa lechatzi Shabbos, muksa letalt le'achashin istalik me'olav shem muksa, and once the muksa is gone, you're allowed to move it. Not only moving it, but even eating it. That's the chiddush. Im eira beidova, something happens. Kagoin sheyardu gesham malat smukim. That's the example we just gave. Rain fell on smukim, on raisins. Excuse me. V'nispachu, and they swelled, they became soggy, that you couldn't really eat them. And then the sun dried them out, they become mutter again. You don't say muksa for half of Shabbos, for a part of it, because at the end of the day, at Ben Hashmashas, these raisins, or whatever the item was, were good. Kosavataz. Now this is very interesting. What about the izemel, which is the knife used by the male? That's a klisha melachta le'issa, or it's muksa machs chisar kiss, and therefore it's muksa. But of course you can use it for the milah. So what do you do with the izemel after the milah? So kosavataz izemel shemol by b'shabbos ein letaltele acham milah. Says the Taz, you can't move it after you've done the milah. To hamuksu machmas chisar kiss. It's a high level of muktzah. You're not going to use it for ordinary use as a knife. It's specified for the milah. And not like those who are makel by saying that there's no muktzah lechatzi Shabbos. Because this is emel. What was its status at Ben Hashmashas? It was muktzah machzis choron kiss. You're not going to use it for other things. And you're not going to use it to cut other things. Even though it's going to be used for milah, which is allowed, of course, on Shabbos. But once you finish the milah, it goes back to its status of ben hashmashas, i.e. that it's mukta. You put it away, says the Taz, in the room where you're doing the milah, and leave it there, and don't you can't touch it after that. He agrees with the Taz. However, he says the yesh lahachmi, once the zemel whilst it's still in your hand, lo yanichenu miyodei, don't release it at shanichenu makom shamishtamer. In other words, whilst you're holding it, you're allowed to hold it. And then, without letting go, don't put it down anywhere. Put it in the place where it's mishtamer, where it's safe, in a safe place. Or take it home. Because any muksa which is in your hand, you can move it to wherever it is. We've discussed that before. So, for example, you take the hammer from the table, you pick it up. Once it's in your hand, you don't have to be quick. You can move it to the place where you need to place it. You shouldn't, be overly long, but you're allowed to put it down. Now, after you do the Milah, you do the Priya. To do that, you need to release the Ezemel. You've got to put down the knife. So the Eli Rabbi says you give it to somebody else. And he will put it in a safe place. But if at the end of the day, you put it down and you're worried it might be stolen or it might cause harm, I suppose. You can rely on the shach and the taz, the Ramah and the shach, who say that it's mutal taltel. And the Chacham brings that in Hilchas Milah. Okay, let's just do 21 and 22, two very interesting footnotes. So if you look at 21, and it's going to spill over to page 37 at the back. So starting here at the footnote 21, an eitzah I thought of, and it brings it in the note here, is how about this? Put it in a kli where there's a dover heta there. So you've got your boss is the dover ha'osav ha'muta, so you should be safe. So what about that as an eitzah? But often sheyachshav ha'kli boss kabossis le'isa v'heta v'alidezeh yochel l'tat l'mokum ha'mutzna das hagonim shlomo zalman Orach she'osa. That's not a good eitzah. To put it in a kli which has got a dover heta there, shekiven she'munach dover muksa b'kli, because if a muksa item was put in that kli, tzorich l'na'im imenu acham esa muksa kodim she'italtel esa kli. Really, you should try and spill out the muksa if possible. And therefore you shouldn't put it there. Turning to page 37, at the bottom of the page. Sorry, it's actually at the bottom of page 36. However, and Rabbi Yashav suggests that's what you can do. His makel, and he says, put the Ezemel in a kli, which has already got a heta item, and therefore the kli is a dover ha'asa lebos. It's a kli which is for a boss. It's a dover ha'asa v'amut, and then you could do it. And the Rabbi Yashav says because you're being mitzaref the das of achronim who say that the kli v'mila ain't a muktzah. It's not muktzah anyway. And he brings also Rabbi Nissim Kareletz, who says another eitzah she'aniach hamoel es hasakin bekis bigdei. The mohel can put the zemel, the knife, in his pocket. So as soon as he does the Milah, he puts it in his pocket, and then he does the Priya. That's what the Marshak says. Now, 22 is also interesting. He says that he quotes at the end, the Eli Rabbi says you can be soimech on the Ramah and the Shach, who says that the Ezemel is mutal taltelei, and in 22 he brings the Chazon Ish. He says the Chazon Ish also agrees with that. Sheyesh lahakel shesakin shel Milah. It's not actually muksa, because at the end of the day it's a kli who oimed ben hashmoshes lemitzvasei, and at ben hashmoshes he disagrees, I guess, with the Taz that its status is a kli muksa machas chesar kiss, but actually it's been set aside for the mitzvah of Milah, and therefore it's not muksa. Now, all right, okay, but say that. We'll leave the other.
Beforehand as well, you can pick it up, you can check it. Not just pick up immediately before.
So there is a minhag before the Milah, or the night before, you put the Ezemel, I don't know if you've heard this before, under the cushion of where the baby is sleeping. So he brings here in the next paragraph in 22, you put it under the head of the baby, even though the Ezemel is possibly muksa machmas chisar and kiss, you can do that. It's not the Milah. You can take the Ezemel and put it under the baby's head. That's part of the usage of the knife, as it were. And then also, there's another minhag that the father of the child gives the Ezemel to the mohel. He says, and thereby he makes him into a shliach. Lamul espenoi. Kosav b'sefer keres abris. Shebeshabbos yitokin she'odiv shelo laskes kein. Better not to do it on Shabbos because there's a shaila of the knife being muksa. Kim she'ein letalteles hasakin b'chinom. You don't do anything which is unnecessary. Yeah, it seems so. So he says that maybe the Mohel does it, but he says that's part of the Milah process. Yeah, and then he says the Rabbi Elyashiv again is makel about this and says that the father can touch it and give it to the Mohel. That's the normal usage of the week there. That's the normal way of doing things during the week, and therefore you should do that on Shabbos as well. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah Berurah. So then the Mechaber finished off and says the rule, of course, is Dover shehuksa ben hashmoshes also kol hayom. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Tes Zayin, it's ikar hachana b'yom boy, because the ikar hachana is before Shabbos, as the pasuk says, k'dichsiv v'hoya b'yom hashishi v'echinos asher yaviu v'zeh hala b'tchilas b'nechnisas hayom huksa milishtam boy, if it was muksa to use it. Okay, Dalet. Grogros utzmukim shoyu muksim. So you've got raisins and figs which were muktzah. V'choshegia ben hashmoshes kfanis yapshu heim v'urim lachila. And ben hashmoshes they were dried and they were roy lachila. Afal pi shelo yodu habaylim ba'is shoshin is yapshu. Even though the owners didn't know about it, that they were dried, v'achach noidu lehem, and then later they found out that they were dried at ben hashmoshes. Sheben hashmoshes kayuveshim muta. So even though the owners didn't know about it, if in reality it was dry ben hashmoshes, then it's not muksa. Says the Mishnah Berurah Yud Zayin, Rotzeleima v'havamina. I might have thought the machmazeh cholala shei muksa. That I might have thought that his thinking was that they are muksa, they're still wet, therefore they should be muksa. To huksa midaitim ela peres b'Shabbos, that he was sort of put it out of his mind for this Shabbos. Kamash malon delei amrin hachi. We don't say this. Dari hule siach daitim yam ela kadeshin is yapshu, because he only put it out of his mind because he thought they were wet, and he put them there so that they could dry. V'hari kvan is yapshu, and they are dry. V'huchem mibayidyoyim, and therefore they're muchem mibayidyoyim. Okay, let's just do hay. And grogers with smukim to chazu v'lo chazu. What about grogers and sukim, which are they're sort of, some people would eat them, some people won't eat them. They're dry, they're semi-dry. Some people will eat them in this dry, sort of semi-dry stage. If he designates them, then they're no longer muksa. But if they weren't royu and he was muzzling them, then no good, because as mona lav milsi, you can't be muzzling something which is muksa. So that wouldn't work. Says the Mishnah Berurah, "Dechaz v'lo chazu hainu shenisyapshu ksas al hagav mibayjom." They sort of, you put them on the roof to dry, and they're sort of semi-dry. Lav milsihi. But if you were musmin something which is muktzah, which is they're soggy, they're wet, and you can't eat them, that's nothing. Tahari heim ka'avonim va'ofar. Okay, kosva poiskim. A moseh amrinum b'diskasoli ben hashmoshes, and this is going to come back to our bath towels and wet clothes, which we'll talk about in a second. Dafka dvarim shegomer b'dei shamayim. When do we say that muktzah ben hashmoshes? That davar shehuktzah ben hashmoshes also kol hayom is kagoin, something which is dafka dvarim shegomer b'dei shamayim. It's sort of completed through heaven. Kagoin grogros the ein nigmar meledei chayim hachama. It's the sun which dries them. V'shema yeh yom onon b'Shabbos. Maybe it's a cloudy day on Shabbos. You're not sure what's going to be Shabbos. Are they going to be dry? Is the sun going to be? It's going to be a sunny day. But something which is nigma b'dei adam could go in tomorrow. You put some tomorrow, some dates in water after the vada elim ru'im ben hashmoshes, even though they may not have been royu on ben hashmoshes, le'at tomorrow v'le'at mayim, neither the dates or the water dehalo kol tu tamat tomorrow sheyurim lashtia, because it hasn't, the water hasn't absorbed the taste of the dates at that point at ben hashmoshes. V'gam atmorim le'is atza le'chazem, because they're very soggy. Afilu hachi loy asach daite minayhu al yom hashabbos she'muksa machmazeh. Why? Because by tomorrow they would have absorbed, the water would have absorbed the dates at the time of the dates, and therefore they're not considered muksa, even though ben hashmoshes they were muksa. So that's a very important klal. That when do we say that iskatzoy ben hashmoshes iskatzoy kol yoma? That's if it's gomer b'dei shamayim. But if it's gomer b'dei adam, for example, the dates that you put in water to make date juice or whatever it is, ben hashmoshes they were no good because the water hasn't yet got the taste of the dates, and the dates are soggy. But if you know that by Shabbos morning you empty out the water, you know that they would be good, then they'll be okay. Now that has bearing on our wet clothes scenario. because if you look at 29, he says v'chol davar shebevada yemuchen me'elav b'Shabbos. Anything which is definitely going to become ready on Erev Shabbos, kosav halavushe srad shebichlal gomer b'leit be'odam ve'elu nechshav muksa v'chein kosav hagoner shlemer zaman arbach omnam. Okay, Indian beged she'urotza ben hashmoshes, regarding a wet item of clothing, whether it's a towel or whatever it is, ben hashmoshes kosav mishnah bur la'el she'muksu v'osel l'taltel kol haShabbos. It's muksa, but you can't use it on Shabbos. However, he refers you back to the footnote. Now, back in the footnote, back in Shin Ches in Sif Tezayin, he says this. He says, "Kosav shechefetz she'osel le'osel roy l'shimish b'Shabbos me'ilov." It's going to become, usable by itself. So it's a stira. Is it going to become muksa or not? So the Shevet Halevi writes, when is the bathrobe, which is the towel, for example, you leave it out in the laundry line, or you're not sure if it's going to dry for Shabbos or not, so then that will be muktzah. But if it's a hot day, for example, where or the bathroom, if you leave a sort of a wet towel on Friday afternoon, and by Shabbos morning it's going to be dry, so then he says, then it's not muktzah. And he quotes the Shevet HaLevi, and Ramosha says the same thing. So in other words, what comes out is this: if you've got something which is, when do we say migud iskatzoi ben hashmoshes iskatzoi kol yoma? That's if it's gobim b'dei shamayim. You've got your grogros and smukim on the roof. You don't know what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, so it's out of mind. It's muktzah now, finished. But if it's gobim b'dei odom, for example, the date water, then by tomorrow it'll be okay. So then it's no problem. Then it's not muktzah for the next day. With regards to wet towels on your thing in the bathroom, if you're not sure if it's going to dry or not, so then it'll be muktzah. But if you know for sure by tomorrow it will be dry, so then it's not muktzah and it'll be okay. That's what emerges from the poskim.
What about your raincoats?
So if you get soaked, for example, on Erev Shabbos and Ben Hashmoshes it was muktzah, so then if you're not sure if it will dry by tomorrow, applying this, then it could be that it's muktzah. But if you put it, you put it and you hang it up, not on the washing line, but you hang it up on somewhere else, and then by tomorrow you're confident it'll be dry, so then that would be okay. Say that.